The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. And I hope you had a good start to the week yesterday. Okay, so I really spent a lot of time over the past 48 hours, even 72 hours, ever since Saturday, trying to kind of gather my thoughts and gather a lot of information to try and tell a story. And yesterday I spent some time I called up several good friends, two of them that are Jewish, and then two of them that are not Jewish. And they're not really Muslim. I wouldn't really consider them Muslim in terms of practicing. But again, if you had to ask them what their religion was, they would say that. And I wanted to get their opinions on what's going on. And again, Jewish as in the United States, they've lived here. Muslim as in the United States, they've lived here their whole life. But again, technically, quote unquote, they're those particular religions. And so, these are close friends. So they're people that I don't have to choose my words with or use a filter. And so I can actually talk to them and ask them the real questions that I want to ask. And I will tell you the most interesting thing that came out of talking to all four of them was that they're all kind of clueless on this overall situation between Israel and Palestine, or the Palestinians and Jews against Arabs and all that. And really, they kind of just know what the media has told them. And I thought that was pretty interesting because nobody really knew much about anything. And so it caused me to kind of take a step back and come up with a list of questions that I'm working to answer. And I'm going to read those to you today. I don't have these all fleshed out, but I'm going to read these to you today because, man, this is a very, very lightning rod of a topic. God, I thought like talking about Trump would be controversial, or, we haven't really talked other controversial things like, Black Lives Matters and that whole situation from 2020 and all that. I mean, obviously there was controversy surrounding that, but man, this is like the controversy of controversies, the Mona Lisa of controversies when it comes to this situation that has basically existed in that region for a long time. So let me read a list of questions because I think it's vital that we lay the proper foundation to then again have a intelligent, non-emotional, non-bias, clear conversation through the lens of common sense, and we call a spade with everything. And so I think over the next couple days as I work to answer these, this will be a great foundation for basically having this, it's almost like a multi-day deep shallow dive into this. Because I'm telling you, you can't digest this situation in one conversation. You can't digest this situation in one 10, 20, 30, 1 hour podcast. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of am guilty of this myself. But let me ask everybody a question, and we'll make this question number one. So, question number one: is Palestine an actual country today? Think about it for a second. Is Palestine a country or not a country? Okay, think about your answer. So, I asked my four friends that I talked to yesterday, two of them that were Jewish, two of them that were Muslim. Again, all four born and grew up in the United States. So, we're not talking about like Israeli Jewish, and we're not talking about, I guess, practicing Muslim, for lack of a better way of putting it, or Muslims that came from, a Muslim country. But all four of those guys said, yes, Palestine is a country. So the confusion is so confusing that it starts right here. And technically, Palestine is not a country. It's a nation state that is only recognized by 130 out of the 192 or 193 UN countries. So there's like 60 countries that don't even recognize Palestine as a nation state. So I went on Google and I asked that exact same question. Is Palestine an actual country today? And like, I mean, it's crazy how confusing getting that answer was. So then I was like, okay, you know what? Let me ask ChatGPT. Let's leverage artificial intelligence that should be able to think about this more clearly than humans, honestly, or more logically, because it's all based on evaluating data. And so I asked ChatGPT, is Palestine an actual country today? And so I took the answer, I took it into 11 labs, and give this a listen.
As of my last knowledge update in September 2021, Palestine is not universally recognized as an independent country. Instead, it is a complex political and territorial issue. There are two main territories associated with Palestine: the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip.
All right. I'm going to pause it there because honestly, if I let it keep going, it'll confuse the crap out of you, just like it did me. So I'll try to even break up ChatGPT's answer in digestible bites. Man, this is so confusing. But in summary, okay, so let's establish one thing. Palestine, let's call it Palestine, even though it's not a country, it's a nation state. And even as a nation state, it's literally not recognized as a nation state by like 60 out of 190 countries in the United Nations. But for argument's sake, let's think about Palestine as a country. And so Palestine is the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and then the Gaza Strip. And so, God, I might be able to put a map or something into the notes of the podcast so you can see it. But basically, if you were to look this up on a map and you asked Google or whatever, show me a map of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, you'll basically see two sections of land inside Israel. So inside the borders of Israel, you'll see two sections, one the West Bank and then one the Gaza Strip, which is smaller. And they're not really even attached to each other. They're two sort of unattached sections. The West Bank is much bigger than the Gaza Strip, and the Gaza Strip is kind of located in the bottom left corner of Israel, right next to Egypt. And then the West Bank is going to be sort of in the middle right part of Israel. And if you look on a map, so the West Bank borders Jordan and then basically the Dead Sea. So here's a good visual. Think of the state of California. So the state of California, if you think of the bottom left corner, kind of where I live, sort of Orange County, San Diego, that would be the Gaza Strip. And then think of like, where California bends, like the top part bends up into the top part of the state, and then it borders Nevada. So that's where the West Bank is. So again, West Bank, if this was California, it'd be a little chunk that borders Nevada. It's bigger than the Gaza Strip, which would basically be a little strip that's sort of where Orange County and San Diego more. Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good analogy. And then based on what I know so far, the Gaza Strip is really incredibly volatile because that is where Hamas, which is the Sunni Islamist fundamentalist military group that basically launched this offensive on Israel, and they rule the Gaza Strip. So they kind of are in charge of the Gaza Strip. And so that's why the Gaza Strip right now, if you're watching the news, they're talking about Israel bombing the Gaza Strip. That's because that's where Hamas is headquartered versus not really being in the West Bank. Okay, so confused yet? Oh my God. So literally, that was the answer to question number 1, where, we're just defining or coming to the realization that Palestine is not a country, it's a nation state. And even as a nation state, it's not recognized as a nation state by 60 or so nations. And so that's pretty confusing. Okay, so question number 2, and I'm going to really just read these questions and then play you a couple clips, and that'll be all for today. Because seriously, I want you guys to digest this because, man, it is incredibly confusing. So, question number 2 that I'm going to answer in an upcoming episode is, define how Israel came into existence. So nobody really knew that. My 4 friends, even the 2 Jewish guys, I'm like, did you know that? What year was it? How did that happen? They didn't know that. And so I think that is something we have to understand as a base, really no different than understanding that Palestine is not a country. So question number 2 is going to be, define how Israel came into existence. Question number 3 is, what is Zionism? Zionism, this is also really confusing. And again, out of the 4 people I asked, none of them really knew, especially my 2 Jewish friends. They didn't really understand the difference between being a Zionist and being Jewish. So we're going to define that. We're going to really define a little more, what is the West Bank and understand who rules that. That's question, I guess, 3. Question 4 will be, what is Gaza Strip and who rules that? Question 5 is going to be, what is the Oslo Accords? The Oslo Accords were done back in, I think, the 40s, so we need to understand that. Question number, I lost track of the numbers, but question 7, let's say, what is Hamas? And actually, I can't even believe this is happening. This will give me a chance to play for you guys that 2.5-minute clip, which I created and that my buddy Paul told me not to post because I wouldn't be able to fly anymore, but it'll give a nice explanation of Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS. I think those are the big 5 Islamic fundamentalist groups. So I'll play that so we can understand that. And then this is going to get so interesting. I'm telling you, this is going to be really interesting and fascinating. But we're going to talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of Israel. And I'm going to tease this cuz this is fascinating. So Netanyahu is very right-wing. They actually call him like Israeli Trump. So literally, the head of Israel is somebody that resembles, not physically, but in terms of his policies, he's very right wing. And again, like I said, they call him Israeli Trump. And by the way, him and Trump are very good friends. And by the way, Israel loves Trump. This is another thing that's going to be fascinating to talk about. So I'm going to share about some info on Netanyahu and kind of what he's been going through, because for the past year, you probably haven't heard too much about it. Wink, wink, probably on purpose. But there's been an uprising in Israel because Netanyahu's wanted to reform the liberal Supreme Court and make them much more conservative. So we're going to talk all about that. And then question 9, I think we're at, is, this is fascinating, man. This is really fascinating. And it's the dynamic that, so most of my Jewish friends here in California, or even actually all of the United States, my Jewish friends from high school, college, post-college, pretty much all of them, Jewish in America, they hate Trump. Now, I know that's a big stereotype, but I'm telling you, from my friend group, and I'd ask you if anybody listening is Jewish, send me a note. Do you like Trump or do you hate Trump? I think you probably hate Trump. So the Jewish people here hate Trump. But then the Israelis in Israel, they love Trump. A big section of them love Trump. Now, again, I know I'm generalizing, but for the most part, you've got this interesting dynamic of Jewish people living in the United States, not fans of Trump. Israelis, fans of Trump. And then Jewish people in the United States, fans of Biden and the Democratic regime here. So fans of Obama, fans of Biden and the Democratic regime. But then right now, if you pay attention to the news the past couple days, or if you've paid attention to this over the many years, so supposedly the Democrats do not support Israel. And this goes back to Obama. This goes, I don't know about Clinton, but definitely Obama, and then it's carried over to Biden. But, they're not really outright supporters of Israel. And then you add a level, the progressive Democrats. So I'm talking like Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad. Are you guys familiar with the squad? It's a few of the young Muslim congresswomen, and AOC is kind of the ringleader of that. But the squad, as they call them, they are not pro Israel. And I'll tell you why I know that is because, and you should do this yourself. Go to AOC's Instagram, Twitter, or whatever. Go to Bernie Sanders' Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, and see what they've said about the condemnation of this Hamas attack. They haven't said anything. And then Obama, I haven't heard anything from Obama. I haven't heard him come out and, be as militant against what's going on with Hamas. Again, if I missed it, please send it to me. But I haven't heard anything about those guys really being against this. So think about this, man. This is so confusing. So you've got the voters, let's say the populace. Honestly, probably most of my friend group that are Biden supporters. They hate Trump, but then now they support obviously Israel, but then they don't realize that Trump supports Israel, Israel supports Trump, and then technically, and again, I mean, I know Biden's come out and said a few things, but the Biden, Obama, Democratic side of things, they are not known to be supporters of Israel. Jesus, this shit is confusing and it's complicated. But think about all that. Okay, so I just looked something up. And again, when I say the squad, that's AOC and then Rashida Tlaib, Democrat from Michigan, and Cori Bush. I don't know where she's from. Democrat from maybe Missouri. Yeah, I think she is from Missouri. Anyway, so here's the headline in The Hill. It says Tlaib Bush criticized by Democrats over statements calling for end to Israel support. Representatives Tlaib and Bush are facing criticism from fellow Democrats over the weekend over their statements in which they each labeled Israel as an apartheid state and called for the U.S. to end funding the nation amid a surprise attack by Hamas that killed hundreds. So, literally, a gigantic faction in the Democratic Party is kind of against Israel, and they're pro-Palestine. And I wouldn't say they're pro-Hamas. And by the way, let me be very clear. I don't think anybody's pro-death. If they are, then they're a scumbag. So like, let's be super clear about this. At the top of the food chain is you kill anybody. I don't care who you are, what side you are, whatever. You kill women, children, elderly, and even men. I mean, God, us men are people too. You shouldn't kill. Okay. So that's a given. But knowing that as a baseline, it is interesting that this faction of the Democratic Party is really this is so difficult to talk about. Let's just say they are pro-Palestine and they're not really coming out right now and condemning what's going on. And then here's the last part for today, because man, I can't even believe this is almost 20 minutes. So here's the fascinating part. You know who is coming out and condemning condemning Hamas and like going crazy? It's all the Republicans, like all the right wing, the Lindsey Grahams of the world. And then even like the talk show guys, like the guys who are super far right, honestly, a little too far right for me, you know, the Dan Bonginos of the world, Ben Shapiro. Again, nothing against these guys. I have a lot of respect for them, but they are coming out, I mean, hardcore. It's like, okay, let's bomb Hamas to the moon. And then what's hilarious is, so right now, those guys are on the same side as, like, again, for lack of a better way to explain it, my Democratic friend group who actually hates those guys. Literally, like, my friends who are Democrats, liberals, and big supporters of Israel, they frickin' hate guys like Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, who else? I don't really consider Tucker Carlson. I think he's kind of above all this. But those right-wing guys, Glenn Beck, maybe throw him in that bucket. So right now, they're on the same team. My friend group and the group of right-wing, let's say, talking heads that they hate, they're actually aligned. And then your people that you voted for, the Biden admin and that group, and even, like, I've got friends who love AOC. I mean, that whatever, but that's pretty funny and interesting that they don't really even realize, because I'd have to imagine if you are, like, right now, if you are just out of your mind about what's happening to Israel and you want vengeance on Hamas, right? And vengeance on, again, Palestine, for lack of a better way of putting it, but let's not have vengeance on the people. Let's have vengeance on, let's say, Hamas. Oh my God, it's confusing. You realize that the people that, last week you were posting, yay, AOC, you're awesome. Oh my God, I love you. Well, what about now? She's not on your side on this one. All right, I'm actually going to end this here. This was a lot to go through. Again, you might want to listen to this thing twice. I'll probably listen to it like 15 times because this was confusing. But fundamentally, let's start with the base of knowing this. One, that Israel came into existence in like 1948, so it's a very new country, and we're going to talk about how that happened. Two, Palestine is not a country, it's a nation state. And even as a nation state, it's not recognized by a lot of nations. And then, even as a nation state not recognized by a lot of nations or recognized by some nations, it's basically two small little sections inside of Israel. Okay. So, two small little, almost like suburbs inside the bigger state. So, let's start there. You've got the other questions that I asked. I'm going to really, define Hamas better for you, and then we're going to talk about all the issues and situations and understand the current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who again is the Prime Minister of Israel and literally known as Israeli Trump. He's right wing, he's hardcore on the right. So just think through all that. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. I've got to talk about this real quick. I want to talk about two quick things. So, Iran is supposed to be the ones funding Hamas, okay? So, what is interesting about that, and this I'm really researching, is so Iran is Shiite Muslim, okay? Hamas is Sunni Muslim, similar to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabians are Sunnis, Hamas is Sunni Muslim, and Shiite and Sunni Muslims are like arch enemies. So then the question becomes, why is Iran funding Hamas, who's Sunni, while Iran is Shiite? So then, the logical answer is, oh, well, they both hate Israel, so that's the greater evil. So they're going to put away their Muslim differences, rise above that, and then they're going to unite under, I guess, the hate of Israel and wanting to go against that. All right, let's take that at face value, and we're going to dive into that more. The other thing that I'm going to dive into is, again, Iran and Saudi Arabia have had an unbelievably contentious relationship for decades. But then recently, and I announced this on like Facebook and Instagram a couple months ago, there was a deal brokered by China and Russia that basically brought Iran and Saudi Arabia together. And then one step above that, Iran and Saudi Arabia are now part of the BRICS coalition, which I talked about BRICS in either episode 3 or episode 4. Iran and Saudi Arabia and the UAE are now part of BRICS. So they're on the same team as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So add that layer of confusion between Sunni, Shiite in terms of Muslim, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, or is it Iran plus Saudi Arabia, Iran plus Hamas, but then they're different factions of the Muslim religion that supposedly are almost as bad of enemies as they are against, Israel. So that's another crazy level of confusion. So I'm going to break that down. And then lastly, I am researching. So Israel has like the most unbelievable defense system. It's called the Iron Dome. It is supposed to be incredible and like state of the art beyond state of the art. And so I'm really going to dive into how this thing was even penetrated. That kind of did not make sense to me when that happened on Saturday. So, Iron Dome, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the conflicting religious stuff, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sunni, Shiite. Oh my God, seriously. If you are not confused, you are a better, smarter human being than I am. But hopefully, seriously, you might have to listen to this episode twice, but hopefully you've got a good baseline. I'm going to revisit all of this in the next episode and then give you more clarity. All right, everybody. We are in the search to call a spade a spade. Have a great day.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.